Ayla.
Hi, I'm Beth Ann.
And this is Let's Talk BL, a Boys Love podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast. It's Sunday, Series Sunday, the day of the week where we talk about all of one series and one series only if I can remember how to speak English.
Chock full of spoilers.
Yes.
So,
we're talking The Eighth Sense.
we are. I mean,
my gosh.
the show that has set Twitter ablaze.
Oh my gosh.
Truly like a tale of two series, in my opinion.
Yeah. This is truly a study in what hype on the internet and conversation can do to a series.
Yeah.
And also what a production team that like maybe gets a little too involved does. I kind of saw a bunch of different things happening and a bunch of different conversations. And from an outsider's perspective, I wasn't a part of the conversation. I was just watching it. And I was like, I felt like everybody was doing too much all at once.
Yeah, I mean, I had an interesting experience with it because I did not watch this show until after it was over. I binged it, which, I'm very open about, like, that's actually my preferred method of, like, watching a show is binging a show.
Yeah.
But I also am one of those people where when a show starts getting too much like this, I end up just not watching it at all.
Right.
So I actually almost did not watch this show.
Right.
And so, like, I watched all this stuff go down, too, and I was like, this is bananas. Like, this is bonkers. So we'll get into all of that. But before we do, nuts and bolts.
Yes. It just came out. It's 10 episodes. It's on Viki. As Ji-hyun stars Oh Jung-taek and as Jaewon Im Ji-sub.
Yes. Okay. Synopsis time. I have not glanced at the synopsis yet, so we will see.
It's pretty good.
Ji-hyun, a new student from a peaceful rural town, struggles to adjust to the bustling city life of Seoul. While at university, he meets Jaewon, who has just completed military service. As they share a love of surfing, they begin to develop feelings for each other. During a surfing trip, they share a kiss, but Jaewon acts as if nothing's happened, leaving Ji-hyun confused about their connection. Yeah, that's a solid synopsis.
Pretty legit.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like I don't even think it's worth talking about all the controversy that happened around the conversation with, like, the producers and the directors and the whatever and the IG lives and the this and the that, just because, like, quite frankly, a lot of it was pure speculation and mistranslation.
It was totally wrong.
So, like,
and Reddit, Tumblr.
Like, I don't even really want to talk about it because, like,
No,
like, the more it came out, the more it like, I realized, like, okay, a lot of this is mistranslations.
Yeah.
And, like, misinterpretations of things that the actors were saying about things that someone else had said to them that had been translated. Right? It was, like, this crazy, wild game of telephone that was causing all of this drama, like, as far as I could tell, just for drama's sake.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that it's always interesting when you have comments or conversation. It's the age-old dilemma. Do you consume art that potentially was created by people who may think differently from you or whose opinions you don't agree with, right? We have seen it in Western media with artists who have very questionable morals and standards. We see it in BL a lot of times with creators who potentially don't like the genre in and of itself. And yeah, there was a lot of conversation. One of the directors was very vocal. He like did a Q&A on YouTube and was very like, I want my art to get out there, and he's very passionate, and I get that. But yeah, if you are a person that really likes to go to the internet and be like, should I watch this? Should I waste my time? Is this? And then you see a bunch of conversation, you're gonna get turned off because you're like, this is just a lot.
Yeah, like, that's why I almost didn't watch this series is because anytime something is, like, overhyped or the conversation becomes over dramatized, like, my brain just, like, for some reason shuts down and is like, I do not even want to, like, be involved in this in any way, which is part of the reason it took me so long to watch Cutie Pie as well, which is wild because like when Cutie Pie was announced, I was rabid for it. Like I was so excited for it. Like bought the series shirt before the show had even come out. Like so into it. And then I ended up like not watching it for a really long time because of the fan conversation. And so I think that happened a lot with The Eighth Sense in like a negative way. I think it was like a really
started positive. And then it turned negative.
I think it was a really interesting
And then it got quiet.
Yeah, and then everyone shut down. I think this one was a really interesting study in the way that like fan conversation can actually have a negative impact on whether or not like on a show's success.
Now, all that to say, I've seen a little bit of conversation on Twitter recently about whether or not you should talk about disliking art and media, and that's not this.
That's not what happened here. It wasn't. I don't like this show for this or that.
I absolutely think you can talk about whether or not you like a thing.
Absolutely.
I don't think you should unnecessarily diss a thing, but if someone were to ask you if you liked or disliked the thing and you have a thoughtful opinion about it, share it. Which is what we do here. But that's not what this. It was just like drama that was created by a lot of Lost in Translation or potentially from PTSD from other experiences. Because that's what I think I saw was like drawing from past creators who were very anti-BL. That was then looked at in this situation through that lens, and that was not the conversation that was being had.
It was honestly wild. It was like a mixture of mistranslation, and it was mistranslation of something that had been translated to the people that were talking about it in the first place, right? Yeah. And so it was like a game of telephone that then got translated, that then was translated into a language that then had the spin of like a point of view that didn't necessarily apply in this situation. Like honestly, it was wild. I was like, this is like a fascinating case study in like human behavior.
I loved it.
The fan conversation alone. Okay. But that's not the show. So let's talk about the show.
Yeah. Okay. So I am curious. We have had very different experiences with the show because I watched it as it came out because I literally watch everything as much as possible when it comes out. And therefore, this was one of those shows that when an episode came out, I rewatched every episode multiple times before the next time it came out. Because there are some shows that I'll watch the episode and I'm like, cool, that was fun, I enjoyed that, but I don't care until it comes out. Like I'm excited for the next episode, but I'm not like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for the next episode. This show is one that I was like, maybe I missed something, like I want to rewatch it. I wanted to see these two characters interact because my god, the chemistry was insane.
Yeah.
So what was it like to binge watch it? Do you get the same level of like tension and chemistry, because then you continually go on to the next thing?
I mean, of course you get the same level of chemistry because you get to watch it back to back when you're binging. You get to watch you get to watch the chemistry build nonstop.
Right.
Like there is no stopgap. There is no pause. Like I feel like even when you're rewatching episodes in between, you're not doing that back to back. You're not you go get something to eat, you go to the bathroom, you go to work, you go you don't literally sit there and just watch it back to back like you do when you're binging. Yeah. And so I actually feel like when I binge a show, I get more attention and more chemistry because I watch it build immediately. I don't have to wait for it to build.
Right.
I watch it build right away, which is like, for me, I prefer watching it that way because then I don't have to wonder, like, did I miss something? Do I need to go back? Did I forget something? Did I like misinterpret that? Like, I'm watching it all back to back and I'm seeing how it all ties into each other kind of in real time.
Like some series probably do need to be binge watched, like Gen Y season 1 and 2.
I mean, listen, I unironically and with no shame have rewatched both Gen Y season 1 and season 2.
I haven't even done that.
So like my devotion to God knows no bounds. But like, yeah, I listen, I like Gen Y. I don't know, whatever. I'm going to say it. I think it's fun to watch.
That's amazing.
I have a good time watching it.
Listen, I love that. I love that journey for you.
The Eighth Sense was really an interesting one for me because It's beautiful. And
Yeah.
so we recently did an episode about like our top 5 BL shows, and we asked people like, what do you think our top 5 said about us? And a lot of the comments about like my choices were like, Ayla clearly has a bias towards like filmmaking and like cinema.
Yeah.
Which is like kind of makes me sound hoity toity, but like it's true. I really do genuinely appreciate like the aesthetic of something, and I appreciate set dressing and like I worked in magazines forever at like before I went like uber corporate, and now my like eyeballs just bleed looking at marketing spreadsheets. But like I do appreciate good, beautiful filmmaking, and this is beautifully shot and beautifully made.
The lights in this were so cool.
And there's color theory in this, and there's just like and like the way that the scenes are staged is actually really beautiful. And like if you binge it like the staging itself progresses throughout the show, which is fascinating to watch. It's just like it is so beautifully and wonderfully made.
Yeah, I liked a lot of the camera angles, and I've seen the director talk about this, how he wanted to get like in their business, and especially one of the ones that stands out to me is when the girl is having her meltdown in the surf club room after she's about to graduate, I think, and Jae-won is the only one in there with her, and he's having his hard time and going through it. Lord have mercy, going through it. And she's like, my life is really hard. And in that moment, the camera's like in her face, and it makes you uncomfortable because she's uncomfortable. And in that moment, what I love is that Jae-won is like, oh my gosh, I'm being so dumb because I'm not the only one with problems. Like, there are other people, and it's nice that nobody's treating me with this girl isn't treating me with kid gloves. Like, I haven't been present for her, even though I'm going through something, and she knows I'm going through something, and she's been there for me through this. But in that moment, like, that camera angle really lends itself to you as the viewer feeling uncomfortable, which I love.
I really loved that relationship. I loved the relationships that were developed between like each characters. It's funny you bring up that scene because like I had made a mental note to bring it up because it reminded me like when I like as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my God, this reminds me of I Promise You the Moon. The scene with Goy and Bilkin when she has decided she's going to go be a flight attendant and not an actress.
Yeah.
And he's going, and Bilkin's, and like O is like having his whole, or not O, Tae is having his whole like, life trouble situation.
Lord have mercy. He handles it poorly. Jae-won handles it well.
Right. He handles it poorly, but I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the same like situation, but it's like two different people handling the same situation. And so it's like this situation is so universal, like cross-culturally, like I was just like, oh wow, this is really cool because like I've seen this exact like relationship moment happen before.
I do like all the friends in this show. His friendship with that girl, also Jae-won's friendship with his guy friends, that dynamic is so different than his other friendships. And then of course Ji-hoon's friendship with his roommate. I mean, that whole they are so cute.
It is the cutest thing.
And I love the fact that the roommate ends up making out with, who knows if they're gonna date the girl. I don't remember her name, but I saw a few people be like, I hate that they did that. And I was like, I thought it was hilarious. Like, I thought it
was cute. Whatever. It's funny.
It made so much sense for those characters.
Yeah. I also think that this kind of it portrayed Korean characters in a way that we don't get to see a lot in especially KBLs. Like, this was a very, very fresh and different take, obviously, based on the production and the directors, right? Yeah. Who, like, are not Korean.
One of the directors is
Western.
He's
so like,
he's South African.
There's that,
which is interesting,
like spin on it that you've got this like additional culture coming in from like a directorial perspective.
Yeah.
But like it really, I felt like I was like, ooh, this is like a new way to view Korean characters that like. And all of the sort of like I think successful K-dramas and like KBLs have that theme. Like Semantic Error, I felt like was another one where it was like a very new and different way to like see Korean characters.
Right. And I think that's important for Korean BLs to start to do. I feel like the K-drama cookie cutter doesn't necessarily work for KBLs because it's portraying these very like one note characters, whereas a lot of times for people to tell these stories, you have to really care about these characters. Right. And I find that KBLs, like, you don't really care about them a lot because they're very one note. And I think, you know, not to get too deep, but for the greater conversation of like what's going on politically in Korea with the LGBTQ plus community, these KBLs have become so popular. Our dating sim, have you seen the footage of one of the actors? He's like leaving a restaurant or something, and there's just like massive amounts of fans, and they're like cheering for him, and they're like, what is going on? Who is this guy? And you're like, oh my God, it was one of the actors from Our Dating Sim. He's like idol level. And that's important because Our Dating Sim, I think, did the same thing where those characters, there was more depth to them. There was more than just like the stoic K-drama formula of like.
Right. And the K-drama formula was like developed for a specific demographic of people. And it was sort of developed to be like one note and easy to digest because it was for like, and I remember like, I think we've talked about this before, but there's a whole article about it, is that like that formula was actually developed for like young office workers. So people in their like late 20s, early 30s who were like coming home from the office at like 10 p.m. because the Korean work culture is very different from the Western work culture. And they were like, they just like needed something to watch that was like in their demographic, that like, you know, of their age range, that like portrayed something that they did every day that was like easy to digest. They didn't have to think too hard about that. They were like worn out after a crazy, you know what I mean? Like that's who that was developed for. And so this is just like such a different storytelling. It's just different storytelling. And so it is very interesting. I thought they did a great job with it. However, for me, this is like a tale of two shows because like the second half of this show, I was like, it like disengaged me. Like the first half, I was like, oh my God, like I can't stop watching. The second half, I struggled to finish. I was like, it just became so disengaging and so like almost disingenuous. And I was like, and listen, I'll admit, like I sat and I was like, okay, how am I going to explain this? Because people are going to get mad at me. People always come for me, and it's fine. Come for me on this one too. But I was like, maybe I just don't get it. Like maybe this is too like highbrow for me. Like maybe I am too stupid to get it. Like maybe that's what's happening here.
No, I saw a couple of people say this on Twitter, and I wonder if this situation is one where you almost don't want them to end up together. Like, does the tension and does the buildup and everything that the characters are going through, does it more lend itself to tragedy rather than the BL happily ever after? Like, do you think that's what it was?
I don't know. I don't think it was that I was like, I wanted them to be together or not be together. I think it was just like the development of the relationship. It felt like it was it completely changed. It completely like the way that it was being developed, just like it was as though it was as though somebody different took over midway through in terms of like writing and directing.
Interesting.
For me watching it. And again, I was like, maybe I'm just like too stupid to get it. Like maybe this is like I don't know what it was about it, but I was like, this feels disingenuous. This feels like it was around episode 6 that I was like, wait, what
that it just like what was episode 6?
I don't know, and I can't even pinpoint like what about it became.
Is that after the accident?
Yeah, and I can't explain what it was. There was just something where it was like all of a sudden it was like I just wasn't engaged anymore. I was like
Yeah.
struggling to finish. I was like, okay, I'm going to finish this for the podcast now.
You know, I did see a couple of people be like, I got bored. It wasn't interesting anymore. Like there was something that like got lost after the accident episode.
Yeah, some sort of like it was whatever that was making that first half just like so magic, where like literally like I couldn't stop watching.
Right.
I was like dying for the net, and like I had to keep watching, and I needed to know, and I needed to see them together. And then like something just, again, it was as though like a completely different company just like took over midway or something.
That's
like
so
I don't know, like it was
interesting.
yeah, it was like a tale of two shows for me. I
can see that and I can understand that. I really liked how they continued this story because it was interesting, the climax of that accident, when he has the accident and then Jae-won just like loses it and he isolates himself and he doesn't know how to. I think they even talk about this in the show. They were like, if somebody goes through something difficult together, terrible together, usually it draws you closer to each other. And in this situation, Jae-won was like, I'm going to take myself out of the equation because of course, childhood trauma or teen trauma. He was a teen when his brother died.
Yeah.
And so the PTSD of it all triggered him in that moment. And he was like, I'm the common denominator. So I need to get out of this situation.
Which is, okay, that's actually like a very common, like we see this happen in BLs all the time of like, I'm just going to retreat. It happened in Semantic Error. Right? Like this is like actually a very common trope. It is a very common thing that doesn't normally like this. I don't know. I wish I could pinpoint and tell you why it is that it felt like all of a sudden it just like felt disingenuous.
Interesting.
Like it felt forced. Like it felt like this wasn't a real story anymore.
Interesting. I think because we've talked about this too. We talked about it just tonight, that you like to theorize and like you like to look at the depth of shows and all this kind of stuff. And I'm very surface level. I enjoy kind of the more just what's right in front of me story, and potentially that's what it is. There was more depth to the first half of this show. You can kind of read into the actions that the actors are doing. You kind of are guessing who they are and what they're doing. And then the second half, it's like, this boy is going through something. We've already found out about his past trauma. We have this other boy who had this accident, and he's just a simple boy who likes another boy. And there's not much to read into. And so there's not really any thought of like, oh my gosh, aren't they? Like in this moment, you're like, no, this girl is annoying and eventually she's going to go away. And I liked the fact that Ji-hyun stood his ground. I like that he didn't make Jae-won's trauma and subsequent like depression about him, and thanks to his friends, because his friends were like, why is he acting like this? Like, think about why he could be acting like this. The friends were awesome in this moment because they're all having that conversation on the steps, and they're like, he's explaining it to his friends like what's going on, and they're like, is this him? Like, what could it possibly be? And in that moment, he's like, oh, right, his brother and all this situation. So potentially, and that's when Ji-hyun decides like, oh, I like this boy. He likes me. I'm going to just wait until he's ready. I'm gonna be here. So I really like the scene where he's standing in his room and he's like, he's seen that he's read the messages and he's like, it's happening. Like, he finally got to that place where he realized like, I'm not his brother. I survived. Like, he needed to come to a place on his own where he could be in this relationship with this person who like almost died. And so I liked the kind of surface level of it all. So potentially that's it. Like, there's just not much depth to the rest of the series.
Yeah, maybe not. And it's not that I like to read into things. I just do like really good like storytelling. Yeah. And so like I don't know, like cheap storytelling is not for me. Not that
Right.
that's what this is, but like, yeah, it's just anything that doesn't require any thought
Right.
is boring for me. Like that doesn't entertain me
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
Like I don't like to just sit there and like have no thoughts.
Right.
Like
Yeah, this show, there were so many things, there were so many layers to it. I like that they portrayed a therapist situation, which is a big conversation in culture in general in the West and in Asia, the need to discuss the fact that like people should go see therapists if you're going through a hard time. And we're seeing that a lot more, I think, in BLs in general.
or even if you're not going through a hard time, by the way, like going
Yeah.
to regular therapy is actually like a totally normal, real thing. Like you should not like have to have a quote unquote reason
Yeah.
to go to therapy.
Yeah, maintenance therapy, I think, is what a lot of people are like. I worked for a couple that were like, we're in couples therapy just because like it's good to communicate through this, and like there was no problems, but they used it as as like a place that they could like have a conversation once a week because like they had kids and they knew that time would get away from them. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I saw a lot of conversation. I liked it. But yeah, I agree. I definitely think the second half of this show felt really different than the first half of the show.
And maybe it was on purpose. Like honestly,
Yeah.
like potentially it was on purpose, like to show how a relationship can change after something like that happens. Like how your whole life does get put on hold after something like that happens. Like I don't know, like maybe it was on purpose, but like
Right.
yeah, and I really was like, because I loved the first half, like I was so invested that I was like, what am I missing? Like yeah.
Perplexing. Yeah. That is, I felt that, but I still liked the show overall. But I can
liked it
see the
overall.
two.
I did like it overall. I just, for me, it was like a tale of two shows. It was like,
Yeah.
I absolutely love, adore 1 through 5.5. And then 5.5 through 10, I was like, I like this.
Yeah.
So like overall, it's a thumbs up, but like it could have been like a 2 thumbs up, whatever. Like
Right. So the question is, would you rewatch it?
I don't think I need to.
You're not so curious. Maybe a rewatch would like
No, 'cause
clarify
I
some
binged
things.
it. I don't know because I binged it. I don't think that would clarify anything because like I've already watched it all back to back. Usually, like a rewatch helps like when you need to see episodes back to back to like find the connection.
Because didn't you say that with Love in the Air that like the second rewatch you were like, oh,
But I watched Love in
liked
the Air as it
this.
was airing.
oh, so
I just didn't start it at episode 1.
right. So
But like I did watch
I
Love in
see,
the
I
Air while it
see.
was airing, and then I rewatched it, but I binged it.
yeah,
And what changed for me for Love in the Air was that like I understood how the relationships were going to come together. So upon rewatch, I like really appreciated it a lot more.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, this makes sense to me now. I get it."
yeah, I see. Interesting. Yeah, I'm curious if the KBLs are going to have a divide now where we have these kind of more, I would almost say more like international, more Western feel to them. And then we'll have the very traditional, like I felt like our dating sim felt very Korean.
I love a good listen.
But it was
I love a good like
amazing.
classic K-drama trope.
Same.
It is nostalgic. It is comforting.
Yeah.
I am here for it. I love it.
I feel like we're seeing that in Thai too.
Yeah.
You have two like
I love a good
different-
Lacorn BL.
do too.
I adore a Lacorn BL.
I
Don't
love
get me
some-
wrong.
I love some drama for drama's sake.
Yeah.
It is very fun. Yeah, I think I would rewatch this because I really like these actors. I like these characters.
I'm just not a big rewatcher in general.
Yeah.
Like I don't rewatch shows just for the sake of rewatching them. Like
Except for Never Let Me Go.
that's not just for the sake of rewatching it.
I mean, I think people you don't rewatch just to rewatch a show. Like you rewatch it because you like it.
But I feel like you've said you rewatch just because you like don't want to watch anything besides BL. So like once you run out of stuff, you're just rewatching stuff.
No, I rewatch stuff because I want to rewatch it. I watch other things other than BL.
What are you watching?
I just finished a K-drama.
Oh.
Yeah. I watch things randomly. Oh, I watched that really awful middle-aged drama on Netflix.
Oh, right. You told me about that.
I don't
know why you watch that. That is
either.
a strange thing. That is an odd choice.
It was a wild watch, too, because it literally, I felt like I was watching the family that I nannied for in New York City. Like, it literally, after I watched it, I was like, I have a little bit of PTSD from actually going through this in real life.
I don't rewatch things because I really like the experience of, unless it's something that I like absolutely am just like enthralled with. I'm happy with the experience that I had watching a show that I liked. Yeah. Like, and I was a book nerd first, and so like I similarly like I never was like a rereader. There were very few books that I like reread
because you can't recreate the first time you read something, or
right? You can't like experience that world being built in your head, and that's what I love so much about reading over watching things. That's why like if I happen to watch something and then I find out later there's a book, I literally won't read the book because for me that is useless. Because part of the experience of reading a book for me, and like I have a master's in publishing, I love books. I am like very passionate about books. And so like for me, one of the like best parts of reading a book is having that world be created piece by piece in your brain, and you're like seeing it, and your brain is interpreting like what does that color mean when they explain it in that book, what does that look like to you in your brain, and at the point that you've seen the movie or the TV show or whatever it is, you have a bias. That world has been created for you, and so I as a reader then don't get to have that part of the experience, and that's like one of my favorite parts of the experience of reading a book. That
makes sense.
So like yeah, and you can't recreate that once you like are rereading a book, you know. So like there are very few books that I have reread.
Oh, I see.
And for that same reason, like there are very few series that I have rewatched because like I just can't recreate that feeling of like rewatching it for the first time.
I'm trying to remember. Do you want to
when I watch Never Let Me Go, it feels like the first time every time.
I do wish I could read quite a few of BL novels because for me, I really like, if I like a show, and maybe this is the public school of it all, the public school education, a lot of times you'll just watch the movie version. And so you get the cliff notes, and the book I feel like gives you more details. So I just finished reading Bed Friends because I really loved that show and I really liked those characters and I wanted to know more about those characters. So for me, the show is like Cliff Notes, and I don't mind having somebody else like kind of give a foundation for the scene, I guess.
It just depends on your passions. Like I also went to public school, by the way. Like I am a public school kid, so like I'm not some like hoity-toity like rich kid. No. Like no, I also had a public school education. You know, but like it just depends on your passions. Like I found at a young age a passion for reading, and like I like learned that like worlds could be created, and like, but it also comes down to passions too, right? Like like we've talked about this, like you've never cared about traveling, like you don't like to travel, you don't see the point of traveling, versus like I have always had this like urge to just like see the entire world, like because I've always been like, we only have a certain number of years on this planet and it's a really big planet, and I want to experience I don't just want to experience my culture, I don't just want to experience the things around me, the languages around me, I want to experience as much as I can. And like I realized pretty early on that like you can in some ways do that through books, especially if you're reading foreign authors and things like that. And so like that's why that's like I think my approach to reading and my experience with reading is the way that it is.
Would you read Never Let Me Go if it was in English?
Yeah.
Just because you like those characters.
Yeah, just because I love the way that the characters are developed so much.
Yeah,
like,
I
think
wish
it's
I knew more about that
genius.
story.
It's not that I want to know more about it. It's that, like, I really love the way that Nung is developed. Like, specifically Nung. I love the development that character goes through.
Yeah.
And, like, I want to experience that as many times as possible. Like, I just think that it's genius.
Yeah, and I will say that the book gave me such an appreciation for the series of Bed Friends because I realized how good they did it and how well Net James portrayed those characters.
Yeah, so I specifically, spoiler, we're planning an episode where we talk about, like, reading our first BL novels because we've talked about how, like, we're not those people that read the novels. And so I, as I just explained, specifically chose a book for a show that had not yet come out that I was excited that, like, I'm excited for it to come out because I like the lead actors that have been cast in this show. And, like, I could not have made a worse choice for myself. And
I really
baby Jesus.
I want to read this book now. I'll read it after the episode because we are reading separate books.
Right. Also because I wanted us to, like, read separate books and, like, talk about the different experiences, but also because I know my experience with reading, and I specifically chose something that had an English translation, but the show wasn't out yet, and I just, like, for me as a person, I could not have made a stupider decision.
How far are you into the book? Are you almost done?
I'm almost done.
How is it a big book?
I mean, I don't know because I didn't buy the physical copy.
Right.
But I'm almost done.
I don't
have very many.
Typically short.
I don't know. I don't know what the, like, normal.
I don't either.
Is. But I am almost done, and it has been. My blood pressure, you guys.
I cannot wait to talk about this because I feel like we have a lot of listeners who read books. And so I'm really curious.
My freaking blood pressure. And, like, just FYI, like, also, if you're noticing the quality difference, we're back on our regular mics because we couldn't use we're having to use our lav mic system because I had arm surgery on both my arms and I, like, literally couldn't hold a microphone.
Yeah.
And so, like, it probably was, like, medically unsafe for me to be reading this book these past few weeks. Like, honestly, it probably was, like, legitimately medically unsafe for, like, my blood pressure.
God. I can't wait.
This is probably why I've been having all these post-surgical complications.
I cannot wait to talk about this. Oh my gosh. Put in the comments what you think this book is.
Yeah, what do you think I picked? And it's my own fault. Like, I did it to myself. I picked it.
I mean, honestly, I feel like my perception of BL books is that they're always spicier than the show. That's just my general perception.
I genuinely was like, well, it can't be that spicy. And I was, like, feeling really confident in myself because I had, like, you know, like, my Metamorphosis with Big Dragon.
Yes.
And, like, Bed Friends.
What other books has this author written?
Quite a few. Or not quite a few, but, like, some that you know.
Yeah.
I don't want to give it away, like,
right.
People will know, but yeah.
I know. We'll talk about it after this episode because I know that they've written other things.
Yeah.
Anyways, I love it. The Eighth Sense. It was a journey.
The Eighth Sense. Yeah. A Tale of Two Shows for me personally, but overall I liked it. I think that it was beautifully made. I think that it tells a really important story, and I think that the way the storytelling is done, was, like, very fresh and unique.
Yeah, that's always an interesting conversation to have. Because as consumers of art, people can have opinions where you appreciate a show, but you don't enjoy certain parts of it, or you don't like the characters.
You can like a show and not like an episode, or not like a character.
Yeah.
You can also, by the way, I know this is like, whoa, groundbreaking. Oh my God. You can like a show and like an actor and not like the character they played.
Oh my God.
And actually, that's a compliment because Maybe it means they did a good job with the character.
Yeah, because like there are shows that I really like
My God.
that like I hate certain characters, but I feel like props to those actors because you kind of are supposed to hate.
That means they did a good job with what they were given.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. Preaching to the choir, I feel like.
Anyways.
This has been Let's Talk BL. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow all things Let's Talk BL at Let's Talk BL.